Picture a Saturday morning in 1932, Depression-era America. A man walks into a Chevrolet dealership with money he has been saving for 2 years. The showroom smells of new rubber and floor wax. Outside, the street is quiet in the way that streets were quiet during the Depression. Not peaceful, just emptied out. He has heard about Ford's new engine, 8 cylinders, something nobody had ever put in a car at this price. He has driven past the Ford lot twice this week already, slowing down each time, looking. But he is standing in the Chevrolet showroom, and he is about to sign for the 6-cylinder. Ford had just done something that should have changed everything. The flathead V8, the first affordable 8-cylinder engine in American automotive history, was supposed to make everything that came before it irrelevant overnight. Chevrolet had no V8, no countermove, no answer. Or so Ford believed. In 1932, Ford introduced the flathead V8, and the American automotive press treated it like a moon landing. 8 cylinders in a car that ordinary Americans could actually afford. It had never been done at this price by anyone. Henry Ford had spent years and a fortune engineering it, convinced that raw power would finally end Chevrolet's dominance of the American market. The numbers Ford was counting on were straightforward. In 1931, Chevrolet had sold 600,000 cars. Ford had sold considerably fewer, but the V8 was supposed to flip that equation overnight. 8 cylinders against 6, more power, more prestige, the kind of advantage that does not require a salesman to explain. It announces itself the moment the engine turns over. What Ford did not factor into that calculation was a 194 cubic inch overhead valve inline 6-cylinder engine that Chevrolet had been quietly refining since 1929. An engine with no racing heritage, no dramatic origin story, no nickname beyond the one its own mechanics gave it. An engine that looked on paper like it had already lost before the contest even began. Chevrolet engineers called it the Stovebolt Six. The nickname came from the slotted bolts holding the valve cover, the same style used on kitchen stoves, and it carried the faint suggestion of something domestic, unglamorous, and entirely beside the point of automotive ambition. Exactly the kind of engine you would expect from the brand that was supposed to lose. What the Stovebolt had, that almost nobody outside Chevrolet engineering fully appreciated, was an overhead valve design. The valves should just sat above the pistons in the combustion chamber rather than beside them. This single decision, made years before Ford's V8 existed, gave the Stovebolt a thermal efficiency advantage that Ford's flathead layout could not match at any displacement. Ford's flathead V8 pushed hot exhaust gases back through the engine block before expelling them. The Stovebolt expelled them directly. The result was a cooler-running and more fuel-efficient engine that Chevrolet advertising described with careful understatement: smooth-running, reliable, economical. What the ads did not say was that the engineering underneath those words was systematically dismantling the V8's advantages one ownership mile at a time in the driveways and filling stations and repair shops of Depression-era America. When 1932 final production numbers were tallied, Chevrolet had sold 323,000 cars. Ford had sold 286,000. In the year Ford introduced the most celebrated engine in American automotive history, Chevrolet, running its older, smaller 6-cylinder engine, outsold them by 37,000 units. Chevrolet's advertising during this period contained one of the most confident strategic decisions in American marketing history. Their ads promoted fuel savings, lower oil costs, and reduced upkeep. They talked about smooth rides, creature comforts, the quiet dignity of a car built around what the buyer actually needed rather than what the manufacturer wanted to brag about. They mentioned efficiency. They mentioned reliability. They mentioned refinement. They did not mention the Ford V8 once, not by name, not by implication, not even obliquely. They did not have to. The buying public made the argument for them every time someone walked past a Ford dealership into a Chevrolet showroom and drove home in a 6-cylinder. The engine was only part of the story. Chevrolet had engineered the entire ownership experience around the Stovebolt's strengths in ways that made the V8's horsepower advantage feel beside the point to anyone who actually drove these roads. The suspension told the clearest story. Chevrolet used longitudinal semi-elliptical leaf springs running front to back, a system that delivered a noticeably smoother ride over the broken, unpaved, and poorly maintained roads that most Americans drove every single day. Ford's transverse-mounted front axle, a simpler design carried forward from earlier models, produced a measurably bumpier experience. This was not a minor comfort preference debated in showrooms. It was felt on every mile of every drive, by every person in every seat, on roads that in 1932 had no obligation to be smooth. Chevrolet also offered freewheeling, a mechanism that disengaged the drivetrain at speed and allowed the engine to coast, saving real, measurable amounts of fuel on every journey. Ford did not offer it. At a time when Depression-era Americans were calculating the cost of every gallon with the same attention they gave to rent and groceries, that single feature carried more weight in a showroom conversation than 8 cylinders ever could. Ford's V8 was revolutionary. Nobody disputed that then, and nobody disputes it now. But it was also a statement of faith, a belief that power alone could define what the American buyer wanted. Year after year, buyers responded that it could not. The Stovebolt Six did not disappear after proving itself in 1932. It grew. Chevrolet bored it to 216 cubic inches in 1937, then to 235 cubic inches in 1941. Through the Depression's final years, through the war, through the post-war boom, through the dawn of the jet age, the fundamental architecture of the engine that had beaten Ford's V8 kept turning. It powered Chevrolets until 1962, a 33-year production run. The engine Ford's Flathead 5.8 was supposed to make obsolete. Outlasted the Flathead 5.8 itself, which Ford discontinued in 1953 after just 21 years. The revolution ended first. In 1962, General Motors retired the Stovebolt Six and replaced it with the Turbo Thrift, a new design intended to carry Chevrolet's engine lineup into the coming decade. The decision was not made because the Stovebolt had failed. It was made because it had succeeded for so long that its architecture was finally showing the limits of what a 1929 engineering foundation could do in a world that now demanded lighter, higher revving, more compact power plants. No press release marked the occasion, no farewell edition was produced, no automotive journalist filed a tribute. The engine that had outsold Ford's V8 in the depths of the Depression, that had powered American families through a world war and a post-war economic expansion that remade the country, was discontinued the same way Chevrolet had always treated its most dependable assets, quietly, without ceremony, because the work was finished. The Turbo Thrift that replaced it was a competent engine. It was not the Stovebolt. And what replaced the Stovebolt could not claim what the Stovebolt had earned. 33 years of being proven right, one owner at a time. Ford's 1932 V8 is remembered as a legend. Museum placards celebrate it. Collectors restore it. The automotive press has spent 90 years calling it revolutionary, and it was. But the car that beat it that year ran a 6-cylinder engine that cost less to fuel, less to maintain, and less to repair. That 6-cylinder had a name taken from a kitchen appliance. In 1932, the most powerful engine in the affordable American market lost the sales race to an engine that never tried to match it on its own terms. The Stovebolt Six did not beat the Ford V8 by being more impressive. It beat it by being more right. And it kept being right for 33 more years before anyone at General Motors decided it was finally time to move on. If this is the kind of story that should be told, if you care about the engineers nobody credited, the decisions nobody announced, and the engines that won wars nobody declared, hit like and subscribe and drop a comment below telling us which car, which engine, or which moment in American automotive history you think deserves this treatment next. We read every one. The next video gets decided down there.